Alright, so I recently played through Chocobo GP, and man, I remember when I saw it announced, I believe in a Nintendo Direct, and I just really thought, learning of the original Chocobo GP, man, that one really slipped by me because Crash Team Racing's a really special game to me. It was the first game that really hooked me. And to sort of learn that there was another big IP kart racer on the same platform that if I had, I probably would have also played the shit out of was something. We'll maybe have to look at getting that one too someday, but I did wait to get this one because I heard there was some weird live servicey-esque things with it. But then eventually when they ended support and I heard that they, fixed some of that around, I decided to finally pick it up, and after, getting distracted with other games, it finally got around to playing it now. Even though I would say it's a competitor to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they're definitely very different games. Like, I feel like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe particularly feels like an evolution of what Mario Kart Wii was, just with some extra bells and whistles now sort of possible with the better hardware. Chocobo GP feels the same way, but more for Super Mario Kart on Super Nintendo, or even a bit of Mario Kart 64, which is almost an entirely different feel, which I also guess makes sense considering you're making a sequel to a PS1 game. But like I said, it almost feels like something that you would see on one of those platforms, or maybe even, Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube, just with, better graphics, which I'm certainly not complaining about by any means. Maybe Mario Kart Tour kind of would have felt similar to this, but that one's hard to get a real good grasp on, considering they never added gamepad support and you were left with touchscreen controls the whole time. There's a couple things I'm kind of mixed on with the game, first of which being the AI. So the AI is more prone to mistakes in this game, which I originally thought was actually kind of charming, almost felt like a bit more of a human-ish side to them. But when I maybe got around to the second lap in some cases, or just, another race at the same track, and I realized that, oh, they're making the same mistake over and over again, it began to feel less like a, kind of cool feature and more like a case of poor programming, or whatever you would call it. The story mode too, I was also mixed on. So the story mode is kind of a tutorial for the game, and even though at first you might kind of like, I don't know, is a tutorial really necessary for, a pretty straightforward genre like a kart racer? But when you get into sort of the structure of it, and they sort of introduce the new items one by one, you kind of get an idea of the different, locations and characters that you have here, especially if you're not familiar with Final Fantasy. I think, it fulfills its purpose and sort of helps you sort of get adjusted to this, slightly different take on things here. What I didn't kind of like, though, was the overall narrative of it. Granted, I wasn't expecting anything really major, but it was kind of coming off a bit too corny for my taste. And I don't know, maybe it would have been better. I've only ever played through the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 and 2. Maybe if I had, a little more experience with, the Chocobo side series, and maybe I would have gotten some of the more references and inside jokes, it would have been okay, but I don't know, that part wasn't made for me. Something else too is I felt like you were a bit more prone in this game than I was used to, compared to more modern Mario Karts, to getting Mario Karted. And, just getting slammed with item after item going from, maybe first or second to second to last or last. And I don't know, maybe part of that was intended because you have your super abilities here, and maybe you're sort of meant to more strategically use them because you're invincible when you use them. But also maybe that's kind of part of, why it happens. So I don't know, that sort of thing didn't really cross the line for me, but I can imagine that being really frustrating for some people. There was 30 Grand Prix in the Grand Prix mode. I believe it launched with 12, so the other 18 were added through 5 updates, so you got 2 or 3 per update probably. And I don't know, I felt like it went more of a quantity over quality there. Like, they only added 2 new tracks, and tracks have different layouts. I mean, they'll share certain sections, but I guess if you count the different layouts, you got 4 different tracks, but the layouts are kind of added together with the different tracks, so 2 to 4 depending on how you look at it. And I don't know, unlike Mario Kart Tour, the other sort of live service kart racer that had a massive amounts of, Grand Prix with, repeating tracks and that, they did a good job keeping things fresh and keeping things, just going quick. Here, it got a little fatiguing for me, I'm not going to lie. Especially, too, because then you have mirror mode, so you have kind of 60 total then. And I did go through it all. But I don't know, I would have rathered, less Grand Prix per update and, maybe another track or, just other content or something. I didn't think, it was necessary to have as many new Grand Prix as they had without, new tracks to go alongside them. And something else with the sort of live servicey update part of it is that I believe the original Chocobo GP only had content from Final Fantasy 7 or 8. And my understanding is it's kind of hard to get all of them together because there's different licensing stuff for each game and, I don't know, whatever that is. But they did add, in addition to 7 and 8, you do have content, I know, specifically from 6 and 9. Maybe there's other games mixed in there that I didn't notice. I'm not an expert by any means. But with, having, 6 through 9 and Chocobo sub-series stuff, I mean, that's great, but I just feel like there being, 16 now mainline games, I feel like there was still a lot left on the title, especially as, being a live service. I feel like there's, just a lot of cool things they could have done. And it's, a shame to, not seeing a bit more of it. And I didn't play online either. I mean, maybe the 30 Grand Prix would have been a little more fun if I was able to do them in online sections. I don't even know if that's possible, but I don't even have NSO anymore, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, overall, a solid time, solid kart racer. Kind of a shame that it's, stuck on Switch, that it never at least ended up on the family of systems that it started on, and, PC too. It's not the only Final Fantasy spin-off that sort of met the same fate, and I decided to sort of pick up and play that one. A little into this playthrough, I'm still playing it, so expect that content on this channel soon, so that's that.